Okay. You ready? Let's do this. You're listening to Explore Magazine's Live the Adventure podcast. This is the podcast that delves deep into the outdoors, will inspire, inform, and get you stoked to explore. And I'm your host, David Webb. Welcome to episode 38 of Explore's Live the Adventure podcast. I'm David Webb. As Canadians, we have a big country to explore. How do you do it? Fly place to place? Stay local? Road trip to hotels? All good, sure. But lately, I've been exploring differently. I've been exploring a new lifestyle altogether. I've become an RV'er, part of Canada's robust recreational vehicle community, and I love it. My entire family has camped out more this year than we collectively had in all years previously. My kids love the caravan, as they call it. We've made wonderful memories and connections as my kids throw off the day-to-day schedule and get muddy and wild. And we do so knowing that common camping concerns like weather and comfort are no longer issues for us. So today, I thought it would be fun to dig deeper into the RV lifestyle with the president of GoRving Canada, Chris Mahony. Chris leads this non-profit organization devoted to promoting RVs to Canadians. And we're going to find out how and why you could make the leap into the RV lifestyle, overcoming barriers, epic RV trips, and so much more. Here's Chris Mahony from GoRving Canada. All right, Chris Mahony, president of GoRving Canada. Welcome to Explore Magazine's Live the Adventure podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome, thanks. It's amazing to be here. Thank you so much, David.
Oh, I'm excited to have our talk today. I wonder at first you could start with just introducing yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, my name's Chris Mahony. I'm president of GoRving Canada. I've been doing this for around 12 years now, so being around the association for a very long period of time, seeing a lot of shifts, and being a big fan of you guys, actually, a big fan of Explore Magazine throughout. So it's, as I said, it's great to be here.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Well, we're a big fan of RVs and exploring Canada in them. GoRving Canada. What is this organization?
So, from a business perspective, it's a nonprofit association that essentially the manufacturers and the dealers came together and created. But for our purposes today, GoRving Canada is in charge of promoting the RV lifestyle to Canadians. So we represent the RV dealers and the manufacturers and the campgrounds, so on and so forth. But we're brand agnostic. We don't sell RV. We don't rent RVs. Our goal is simply to inspire and educate Canadians around the benefits of the RV lifestyle and ultimately getting more Canadians to get outside and explore.
Yeah, I love it. How long has GoRving Canada been doing this?
Yeah, the association has been around since 1997, but it's sort of morphed and changed over the years. The current version has been around 20 years. So we just actually have rebranded our association recently, but we've been in the business for a while, and we've been supporting a lot of the dealers and manufacturers throughout.
Why are you promoting RVing? Why should Canadians care about RVs and the RV lifestyle?
Oh man, that's right up my alley, David. Ultimately, I would say that everybody has to recreate one way or the other, and how people want to go about doing that, whether it's travel, could be air travel, could be boating, could be cottaging, could be other things. We feel like RVing is, part of that core for recharging and recreation. But moreover, we think that RVing is like a rite of passage for Canadians. A, because of the backdrop that we have, obviously, but B, because of the freedom and flexibility. It really allows you to travel on your own schedule, and you can choose your own adventure essentially. And we find that a lot of people respond well to that, but also not just because of that. It's also because they're not just traveling to hotels, they're bringing the comforts of their own home with them as they go. So it's literally their home on wheels, which I think if you're a family, is most people will attest to, is a lot easier and far more fun to do.
Packing and unpacking, always the worst part. So if you can bring it with you and be ready to just set up, that's a huge benefit to anyone. Particularly, I think anyone who has kids, but anyone in general. Do you think there's something specific about Canada and RVs that just are that match made in heaven? Because they're so popular here, even from people coming abroad, renting them, versus people living here. Is it the size of our country, or what is it that just jives like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's a little bit of everything. It's obviously the diverse nature of this country from coast to coast to coast. I mean, it ranges so drastically from east to west, and I think that really has some obviously a lot of appeal to Canadians themselves, but Europeans coming over every summer for their vacations, etc. And then, as I said, the RV is like the perfect sort of conduit for that in order to be able to see that and say, hey, I want to go see this. No, wait, I want to go over there and see that, as opposed to being tied down to specific areas and hotels, so on and so forth. But it's interesting because during COVID, obviously, we saw the lockdowns and the
Mm-hmm.
RV business boom so significantly, but
Mm.
that hasn't really dropped off. It's almost like Canadians rediscovered Canada again during COVID.
Hmm.
Campgrounds, of which there's over 4,500 in the country, have been, pretty booked up throughout. So it's good to see that Canadians have kind of read the memo, if you will, and really realizing what we have in our own backyard.
Really interesting. So the COVID boom, I suppose, for RVs, probably a lot leaning into the domestic travel aspect of it, and people not being able to or not being as comfortable flying abroad. You're saying that's hell. Is this a long-term trend?
I mean, I think it's not completely sustainable to go in the direction that it was, and when I say held, it compared to where we were in 2019, it sort of evened out to that. It
Hmm.
really boomed, obviously, in 2020 and 21 as people really had that option to go into Canada and explore. But yeah, I think that also what you got to keep in mind is that with inflation and the cost of travel, like as much as we all love to fly, anyone looking at flight prices these days or hotels, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
are just stunned. And especially if you're a family and you
Mm-hmm.
want to go to like Disneyland or something like that, then ultimately people see RVing as still that affordable and like sort of cost-effective way to travel. And I think that's the other big benefit when we talk about freedom and flexibility and then sort of the comfort. The other big one has got to be affordability and value because as much as things have gone up in price, campgrounds are sort of staying the same. And guess what?
Mm-hmm.
Being out in nature, looking at the stars, connecting with your family, that's all free. So I think that kind of thing really resonates with Canadians.
I'm going to let you in on a secret. My family has owned a campground and RV park since the 50s on Vancouver Island. So I've been at least an observer of this community for my entire life. And I've seen a lot of changes in who's come to the campground when I was a kid. I wasn't alive in the 50s. I'm not that old, but until now. Is it changing? Are there demographics changing? Who is the typical modern Canadian RV owner?
Well, that's awesome. I had no idea. So we'll definitely we'll have to visit that this summer at some stage when we're out on Vancouver Island. But yeah, the RV has certainly changed. I mean, I mentioned to you at the beginning that I've been here for 12 years, and in my 12 years, I've seen like obviously there's a big shift in the way in which we sort of reach Canadians and the consumer, but there's a massive shift in the consumer itself. I'll be honest with you, when I started with GoRV in Canada, one of the biggest barriers that we had when we looked at things was not for people like me, because a lot of people felt like RVers were, let's be honest, empty nesters, a little bit older. The demographic was skewing that way. Our recent data from Ipsos shows us that actually there's a significant portion of RVers are now under the age of 55. In fact, 67% is the latest stat we have, are under 55 years old. So it's become a lot more popular with millennials. And it's become a lot more popular with obviously the younger renters. And as they've gone through trial and they've gotten married and then have partners, et cetera, they've got into the lifestyle itself. I would say that RVing in terms of the amount has probably stayed fairly even, 14% of Canadian households, which is a staggering number to anybody that lives in a city, own an RV. And by that we
That
mean
is high. That
I
is
know.
high. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. It blow honestly, it's one that I have to triple check every time too. But
Hmm.
that does count for like tent trailers all the way up to park models.
For
So it's
sure.
it's the
For
full
sure.
gambit. But I mean it does ultimately mean that there's around 2 million RVs on the road in Canada. So Canadians know about RVing. Our job is not that difficult in that sense.
Hmm.
We kind of help inspire and educate people to get out there. But ultimately, I think RVing is something special to Canada. I think you were right with what you said earlier. I mean, when you have those kind of numbers, Canadians are aware, and there's a lot of this country to explore. So I think that's probably why you're seeing such high numbers.
I live in Vancouver, and certainly, if you didn't leave the city a lot, 14% might seem high, but I also spend a lot of time on Vancouver Island and in rural areas. And certainly, if you're looking, you're seeing some type of RV parked in so many driveways all over the countryside. So that actually, it doesn't surprise me as much as I thought it might when I really first heard it. But yeah, I'm like, yeah, 14% is probably, in certain areas, it's low regionally. You mentioned renters. There's a lot of RV rentals going on, from peer-to-peer to places like Canadream and others. Is that a pathway in?
I mean, I think that we'd be silly to, not even look at the sharing economy. That is the modern day reality for so many. We've talked about affordability, and I think that usage and shared usage is definitely something that has increased the market. It's certainly something that has not come without some struggles, as people figured out insurance issues and so on and so forth. But it
Mm-hmm.
seems like that a lot of that's being cleaned up, and now you have companies like RVeasy and Outdoorsy that
Yeah.
do those peer-to-peer rentals. And Canadream is obviously one of the larger rental components, and I think they're going crazy in the summertime, as we said, with a lot of Europeans coming
Mm-hmm.
over, and a lot of that books out super early, so it's even hard for some Canadians to get trial, which I think is why
True.
that peer-to-peer almost helps with that. So yeah, I think it's part of the market. It's here to stay, and I look at it as a positive overall.
It helped me out when I first had kids that we used a couple peer-to-peer rentals, and I'll tell you more about my journey in a minute, actually. But so we talked about 2 million RVs, 14%. Who do you want to see? Like, where do you want to grow? Do you want to grow that younger market, or even younger still? We started at a bit under 55, but that's a pretty big gap from adulthood to 55. Like, is there a market that GoRving Canada is actively targeting right now specifically?
The first thing that we should talk about here is that we're never going to try and market to somebody that doesn't have a propensity to the outdoors. Like,
Right.
RVing is different than tent camping. It's glamping. It's getting you up off
Mm-hmm.
the ground. As I said, bringing the comforts of home. It really does create those moments of connection with family in that regard. But if you absolutely hate the outdoors, there's no way you're going to be into our segment or our lifestyle. That said, I think there's a lot of growth opportunity, specifically with new Canadians. We've seen a
Mm.
huge value shift in that market. If you go to any of the RV shows, whether they be in Ontario or BC or Alberta or whatever, you can just see the diverse mosaic there. It has become a lot more that way, and I think that's tremendous, and certainly something that we want to try and support further. It has skewed younger, David, but I mean, ultimately, let's be real here. These items are additional income items. This is, kind of splurging. While RVing is affordable, you need a relatively good household income in order to be able to support one of these, lifestyle choices. And so I think that, we're realistic about that. But we want to get people into the lifestyle early so that they're thinking about it, they're talking about it, they understand what we're trying to promote here. I mean, that's why, and we'll probably come to this, is like Wildhood is our corner campaign, our hero
Mm-hmm.
campaign for everything, because we feel that it resonates across all of those market segments.
You'd mentioned the affordability compared to other forms of travel. So I wonder if we could dig into that a little bit, because it's pretty much the first question that people come up with, right? Like, oh, they might look at the purchase price of it as daunting, other, maintenance, storage, all these things. But you're saying it's more affordable.
Yeah, and it's like everything. There's different ways you can break stuff down. We've been very careful to make sure that we're clued in on these kind of numbers. We do a vacation cost analysis, which is an independent study, just because we really want to delve into what's going on. And obviously, we've talked about inflation. So some of the numbers we have are from 2020 and have probably increased since then, especially on, for the side of travel. But we figure it's 57% less expensive to RV than fly and stay in a hotel on a, family
Wow.
vacation. And that's like based on Europe, going to a European vacation, or as I mentioned earlier, like Disneyland type thing. So a lot of RVers, 43% say that they save over $1,000 to $2,500 a year by traveling with an RV, which is, still fairly significant to Canadians. When we talk about affordability, it's like if you have to buy a flight somewhere, basically, you're on the same as everybody else. Like your flight costs X amount of dollars, and your hotel, yes, you can choose to stay in a 2 star or 3 star or whatever, but it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much the same. For an RV, there's just such a wide array of them, so that
Right.
they start as little as $15,000. So if you're new to RVing, you used to be a camper and you want to go out with your young family, you're in a tent trailer, and all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
you're towing that with your family sedan. It's not a big deal. And you're in for 15 grand. If you go up a little bit to some of the trailers and things like that, we figure it's roughly around about $180 a month right now, including
Mm.
all of your costs for that, in order to be able to travel in that flexible way.
Have you ever looked into any sort of threshold at which someone would make the leap from renting to owning? If you booked one weekend a year, maybe renting's the path. But
Yeah.
when do they start looking at, okay, I want to make this a bit more of a lifestyle? Like, is there a day threshold? Is there a money threshold? Or do you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an incidence threshold. I don't have a specific number for that. It's just something that we kind of see around a certain age. The
Right.
bingo is around 40 years old. It seems to happen. Maybe that's people starting to change priorities. Often it's, believe it or not, the decision maker quite often is female for this
Mm-hmm.
particular market, and obviously for a lot of household items, that's the case. So I
Yeah,
think,
no, I believe that very easily. Yeah.
the other component is kids, right? So
Right.
switching from rental to ownership is probably something you would do after you've had children and you realize it's something that you want to sustain with your kids. Because I think that there's a certain point of getting out in nature with your family, connecting with your family. Everybody's so busy, life is just flying by. And I feel like at that stage, you make the commitment to not just rent, but to buy into the lifestyle. So you're doing it multiple times a year. And as we said at the beginning, it's probably
Mm-hmm.
an incidence thing of six plus. But with that sharing economy, I mean, it could be lower, and that certainly helps.
What about if you're looking at someone who's currently maybe a tent camper and looking to move, up in that direction? How do you reach and speak to them, and what do you find they're looking for?
That's a. Are you reading our plans for 2025? I don't know what's going on. So we actually, this year we ran a campaign. We have our Wildhood campaign, which is our brand awareness campaign, and then we have our
Mm-hmm.
sort of tactical campaigns underneath that, which is, this year we did affordability, which was kind of a really interesting take, and we can talk a little bit about what that was about. But next year we're actually looking at converting campers, and literally going
Mm.
into campgrounds and providing that opportunity for campers to sort of get off the ground, so to speak, and be part of that sort of more glamping nature. We know that tent campers are obviously our market, and they have a propensity to the outdoors, and they understand
Mm-hmm.
wilderness and nature and so on and so forth. Often it's a cost thing, and then it becomes a commitment thing. I think
Mm-hmm.
that there's two barriers that I would point out that we need to work on with tent campers, and those are drivability, because I think
Okay.
the driving factor scares a lot of people off. And then the other concern, obviously, is, we've talked about affordability, but also storage. Like a lot of people,
Right.
are living in condos downtown, etc. How the heck am I going to get an RV? What am I going to do with that? You know what? I'm going to tent. My life is going to be a lot easier. And the reality is that most RV dealers offer, storage as part of their service packages and things like that. So I think we need to do a slightly better job of getting in front of them in terms of those kind of stats. But ultimately, I think most tent campers will graduate towards the RV at some stage in their life.
I would tend to agree. And, to be honest, you just educated me that most RV dealers offer storage as a package. I didn't even know that. And certainly, again, I live in the city. Storage is probably a primary concern for a lot of people. For my wife, she likes the outdoors. She wants to travel with the family and stuff, but the sleeping on the ground in the tent was always kind of it was hard for her. She wasn't really that interested in it. And so we actually we made the leap into RV ownership this year. We got a 28-footer travel trailer. We've spent more days camping this year than I don't even know than our entire relationship combined, before kids and after, I would say, in a single summer. And a big part of that was just getting up off the ground, just not having to worry about that part of the night, being comfortable. and the rest of it's kind of the same. And in fact, one of my kids really still likes a tent. So a few nights we just camp out beside the RV in a tent. So you can actually have that experience still if you choose to. And
Yeah.
we really found that to be a lot of fun.
I mean, I look, I grew up tent camping. I
Mm-hmm.
do own an RV. I have nothing against tent. I still think it's great, like living in Ontario,
Mm-hmm.
going out into Algonquin, with
Mm-hmm.
a canoe and paddling, etc., portaging. You can't do that with an RV. And I think there's a big component of the outdoors for me personally with that. But I love that sort of hybrid what you're talking about. I mean, the kids love to sleep under the stars, and the tent
Mm-hmm.
provides that. But you know what? The parents kind of want to make a cocktail and sit by the fire and have those comforts of home, etc. So I think it's the best of all worlds. And like we're saying, I mean, ultimately, tent campers will likely turn to RVing at some stage in their sort of outdoor lifestyle career.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely see that. And it's interesting that you mentioned the Algonquin Park. And I just got back from a backcountry trek not too long ago. And certainly, this might be blasphemy to some of my listeners and readers, but I often find it's like the tent is the shelter you can take where you need to take, okay? You can't take an RV out on a canoe in Algonquin. You can't take an RV on a 4-day backpacking trip through the wilderness where there's just a tiny little path to walk on, obviously. So the tent is the shelter you can take there. But there's not really any advantage to using a tent in other situations where you can drive to, right? I mean, it is not like having a tent trailer somehow detracts from the experience and makes it less outdoorsy or makes it so you're not enjoying the outdoors. It just eliminates the weather factor quite a bit, brings in some more comfort, some more space, some more enjoyment, maybe makes it more accessible for everyone in your group, whether that's family or friends. I saw this great interview with a climber years ago who lived in a van, and people asked him about van life and whether he prefers it. And he's like, listen, I would prefer for a 5-star hotel just to appear wherever I want it to be, but that's not an option, so I live in my van. And it is that kind of thing that's like, yeah, I mean, if you can take it there, it's better. Like, it is better. I can tell you that from experience. It's better to have an RV than a tent. But if you
Yeah.
can't,
So
then you take the tent.
I mean, I think you nailed something there too. Is what one of the things that I found going from camping, my own personal experience from camping, tent camping into RVing was like I was amazed by the community the first time out. Like I'll be
Mm.
honest, my first time RVing, I was trying to level the RV and I was trying to start the barbecue, and I really didn't have a lot of idea. I was renting it, and I really didn't have a lot of idea. And all of a sudden, this two guys came over, and beer in hand, whatever, but they came over, they're helping me out. Then we ended up chatting around the campfire for the night. And it's that kind of community that I think definitely exposes you to. And maybe tent's a little bit more isolating than that. So I think it's sort of a shared thing. It's like one of those things that, when motorbikes are going down the road and they kind of nod at one another, I think RVers probably are doing the same as they're passing each other.
That's a super interesting point, and it's so true. I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, I've tent camped a lot in my life, and I can't think of any time where I've had someone walk over and offer to help me set up my tent before. But like I said, my family has owned an RV park for 50 years. So, sorry, 75 years, since the 50s. And I just started really using one recently. I've been around them, but my kind of dirty little secret there is that I never really used them a lot. So I was pretty new to it. And there's these, there's little things you got to know, right? There's a whole bunch of little things. And the amount of people that just walked up and just helped me, told me I was doing something wrong. I had people underneath my RV helping level it, helping level the slide out. A guy gave me a tarp. I was just like, what is this? What's happening right now?
Yeah, what's the catch? Like,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
you're used to like city life where there's always a catch for something, but out in the
Mm-hmm.
wilderness, anything goes. And part of our thing is to educate. We want to, inform, educate, but inspire as well, I guess. But I
Mm-hmm.
think education is key.
So, listeners will notice a couple times you mentioned the word wildhood. What is wildhood, and how does it relate to GoRving Canada?
Oh man, what is wildhood? Wildhood is our baby. Wildhood is a philosophy. So wildhood actually started because we were looking at the average RVer, and guess what? There's not an average RVer. There's
Hmm.
an RVer that wants to maybe go out with their family, and there's an RVer that wants to go exploring lakes and rivers. There's an RV that wants to go fishing, hunting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So wildhood was kind of that connection between everybody. And it's really that freedom, that sense of freedom, curiosity, and wanderlust that we had as kids. We all had it. Remember, we used to
Mm.
build a fort in the living room and everything. It was that like wanderlust that you had at that time. And as time has gone on, we've seen that people get into their routines and it's planned and itineraries and so on and so forth and rules and et cetera, et cetera. And some of that inner spirit of adventure is lost through that.
Hmm.
So when we said our initial campaign was bring back wildhood, it was actually a call out to parents, to helicopter parents, to say kids
Mm.
want to stare at the stars past their bedtimes. They want to play, not have play dates. They want to wander and roam free. And that was like aimed at parents, but also really aimed at everybody. It was saying, hey, we're not saying break the rules, but we're saying live your wildhood, your inner childhood,
Hmm.
and then bring that back. And we feel that the RV lifestyle gets you exactly that. We feel like whatever it is you want to do, being outside in nature is good for your mental health, and it sure is good for your family, friend connections. And even if you're nomadic, and we see a lot of that with digital world and so on and so forth, nomadic entrepreneurs, we hear a lot of people that are inspired as they get out, into the wild. So I think wildhood is very much that.
Yeah, yeah, that really resonates with me. I think without explicitly knowing the term, that's basically what my family has been doing with the RV use, particularly this last summer where we had one of our own to use. I always laughed a little bit that my family was often there and friends and other people. I wondered what people thought of our parenting style, because when we got to RVs, we did embrace that wildhood, that it was like we live a pretty structured life. I have 5-year-old twins who are in kindergarten. My wife and I both work full time. So we kind of got to keep things, pretty structured to survive the day. But when we go to the RV, it kind of just, we kind of just throw all that out, to be quite honest. And it's like, you want to dig in the mud, dig in the mud. You want to, bedtimes, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, let's play that by ear, breakfast times, all that kind of stuff. We get a little crazy sometimes. Just taking that schedule and throwing it out and letting my kids go feral a little bit, and doing the things out in the rural areas, the campgrounds that they really can't do in Vancouver. They need more supervision. I'm not just going to tell my 5-year-olds to go run down the road to the local park. I'm going to go with them and I'm going to supervise.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, it's like kind of set up on a beach, and if as long as they're in eyesight, that's good enough. So I really have embraced that, and I agree that the RV specifically, more so than any camping trip I've done, has facilitated that by just having that solid home base that we can stay for longer periods of time. A 5 to 7 night camping trip in a tent is a little bit daunting sometimes. There's you might be getting pretty sick of it by day 7 with a whole family anyway. But in an RV, in our 28 footer, it's kind of nothing. Really. It's
Totally.
there's certain elements of it. And like you said about when we were kids, building playhouses, building tree houses, the RV kind of is that. That's the unexpected thing that I didn't really think about, is that to my kids particularly, I think they just think it's a playhouse because it's funny, right? It's smaller. It's got little nooks and crannies. The bunk beds, you kind of crawl in like little caves and they play in there, and everything's a little bit different. It's got kind of a funny toilet. And they think the whole thing is hilarious. They think cooking outside is hilarious. They, all these things it's basically like living in a giant dollhouse for them. And they really just, they get a kick out of it and are so happy when they're there. And
That's awesome.
That's why we really embraced it.
You're essentially the poster boy for wildhood. That's clear. So
Yeah.
I can see that.
I'm happy to be.
It's funny, as I do a lot of these shoots for the RV lifestyle and a lot of the videos around the country. The first thing that I always notice is that as soon as we introduce kids into a unit, it's like it's go time. It's like we're jumping up and down on the couch in the bed, and there's something about being inside the small home or the home on wheels that enlightens their imagination or something. Like they're just filled with joy, and it's like it's authentic. It's about as authentic as it gets, and I think that's why really we're trying to use wildhood, because we believe in it as a philosophy. We believe it should be something almost wearable, where we have sort of lost our way a little bit. And I think, in COVID, mental health was a huge hit for all of us, for everybody, for some more than, most, but it just still was a big impact for Canadians. And coming out of it, that's why we launched our sort of Find Your Wildhood campaign, which was like a version of you is out there. Now go get that version. It lives in the wilderness. wilderness. And guess what? It's a really good version. So I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of what we're trying to do is obviously, we're trying to sell the units for the dealers and rentals, but the way I look at it is that the RV is just the portal. And this is kind of what you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned already. It's just like it's
Mm-hmm.
just a door that opens up to whatever world you want next. And that right there is what I feel appeals mostly to Canadians, especially given, what we have, as we've said, in our backyard.
So, families and RVs, do you see some common FAQs or challenges or concerns coming up with families who want to, bring the whole family, the whole kids, young kids into RVs, and or specific benefits that you're hearing beyond, the wildhood about the RV travel that they might not have gotten from other types of travel?
Well, with the family specifically, but I mean, if you're like my family, then your pets are part of it, and
Mm,
that's obviously the hugest one of the biggest components of this is try and fly with your
yes.
pets. I can tell you, I've got two Labradors. I've tried it. It's no fun. So
Yeah. I have one Labrador and I wouldn't even try it. So you're braver than me.
Yeah, so that's always a challenge, but bring the pets along. That's key. I think that's a big part of the family. It's interesting. I think one of the things that I've noticed as we've sort of looked around and done a lot of our research, et cetera, is like seeing more of the multi-generational component of families come together. So it's like
Okay.
RVing provides that opportunity for grandma and grandpa to come as well. And whether it's two separate units or as you said, the kids stay in a tent or whatever, it's actually an opportunity for multi-generational families to connect. And I think that is something that's really rare and important these days. So that's definitely something we get a lot of inquiries about. The biggest thing from just in terms of, that we get asked about in terms of RVing is like, how do I go about it? Where do I go? What do I need to tow this and can I drive it? Most people are just scared to drive it. And I think until they get behind the wheel, but those are the biggest things that show up in our FAQs.
What do you say to these people? Obviously, what do I need to tow it? That's going to vary by unit. From a tent trailer to a 40 footer is completely different. But
Totally.
when
Yeah.
it talks about driving it, whether it's driving a motorhome or just towing a trailer, how do people overcome that fear?
You do it just by doing.
Yeah.
It's the short answer. Look, it's not and I get it. The first time I drove a 32-foot Class C, I was gripping the wheel pretty tight, and every time I went by a truck, I could feel the back end just shift slightly, and it was a little unnerving at first. But after
Mm-hmm.
your first couple hundred kilometers, it's amazing how you settle into it. I mean, slow and steady, right, is the way forward. And the reality with RVing is you shouldn't be in a rush. You're not part
Yeah.
of that traffic system anymore. You're not part of that craziness that you have to feel during the week and all that stress. So it should be a stress-free thing. You should be able to stop wherever you want, do what when you want, et cetera. We talked about freedom and flexibility. But I think that, what we try and do is we try and offer people, we actually do offer some driving courses for people. We offer
Okay.
trial. A lot of dealers will do that as well. It's amazing how the dealers are not, it's very different than the car dealership world in the sense that the dealer kind of becomes your community as well.
Hmm.
Because you have such a sort of large item that requires, servicing and maintenance, and there's a lot of functionality to it.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you the first time I bought I had an Airstream. I think the dealer took 2 hours with me and took me through every single thing in the unit, including a test drive, and showed me, how to, deal with swaying and so on and so forth. So that's really what we say is put your trust in the dealer. Look at a lot of the resources that we provide online. That's why we're here. We're here to help, yes, inspire, but we really are here to help educate as well.
That's an interesting mind shift, I think, from anyone who's bought a car. And I'm certainly not wanting to put down car dealers, but there are certain stereotypes there. People get very nervous walking into car dealers, and I think maybe that might be a barrier there to think, okay, I want to go have a look at some RVs, but I don't want someone pressuring me into buying a $50,000 RV today. I just need to look. And so the idea that you could put some trust in that dealer, do you find that a fairly universal experience in dealers across Canada, that you can go there and kind of walk in and admit your naivety and just walk me through this and really kind of like have that community type experience at most or if not all dealers?
Yeah, most that I've sort of witnessed, I think that there's, the RV Dealer Association does a great job of making sure that dealers are to a certain standard in Canada. But ultimately these dealers are in sort of suburban and rural areas. They're pretty,
Mm-hmm.
they're pretty easygoing by nature. They're representing a lifestyle too. They do it themselves. So it's like we talked about that community. I mean, it's not like, hey, come on down, 1999 and you get it today and off you go.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're accountable for that. They do understand that these units and vehicles need to be serviced and maintained in a certain way. So,
Mm-hmm.
there's business there, et cetera. So I think that that's important. But yeah, it's certainly if my advice to someone if they were unsure about going to a specific dealer, would be just to go to an RV show. That's when
Yeah.
you can sort of see 10 different dealers, but you don't actually have to talk to anyone if you don't want. You can just go and poke your head around. It's amazing the different kinds of RVs and the different floor plans. And most people will pick a dealer not just because of the dealer themselves, but also because of the type of RV that they stock, right? Because people are very specific about, I need a bunk here, or I want a two bedroom, or I
Mm-hmm.
need a, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And certainly there are some great shows coming up in the spring season right across Canada, and we can link to some of those from our page as well. One of the cool things I saw that you're doing at GoRving Canada is RV trip guides, some inspiration,
Yeah.
some ideas of rather than just saying, "Hey, Canada's a blank canvas," of really thinking, "Okay, you get your RV. Here's what to do with it." I wonder if we could talk about some of those new trip guides that you're rolling out for the new year, and why you chose the spring, summer, fall, winter destinations that you did.
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I think this is the exciting part. This is the doing
Hmm.
part, right? This is the actual exploration and what have you. So what reason why we started this is because a lot of folks were kind of, okay, now I have one. Which campground
Hmm.
should I go to, and what's a good route, and so on and so forth. And I think that anyone we've ever worked with, whether it's a content creator or sort of like a celebrity like Brian Balmer or John
Hmm.
Montgomery when he went across the country for us, we've always used their kind of notion of trip guides, and we've added that into our site. So. All of these are stored there. We've taken some examples for you guys today. The spring is this is something that I've actually done because I'm a scuba diver as well, but the Northern
Oh, right
Ontario
on.
RV road trip. So we've kind of taken this from Thunder Bay and taking you through the sort of beauty of Lake Superior and the provincial park there. Lots of cliffs meet pristine waters, and then continue on to Manitoulin Island, which is where, again, there's a lot of diving, et cetera, the Bruce
Hmm.
Peninsula. And then just sort of being down from those dramatic shorelines into the lush forests and relaxing shorelines of Sauble Beach. So, obviously a big popular area. And then Owen Sound, the Blue Mountains and Collingwood are all part of that. And ultimately getting into the Wasaga Beach, which is like kind of the perfect mix, we think, of nature, adventure, and
For
even
sure.
getting you into a little bit of urban excitement.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is something we didn't really talk about before, is that, we talk about getting out into the wilderness with RVing and nature, but actually what we find with RVing is it gives you an opportunity to stop in little towns along the way. So, you're traveling from point A to point B, but the kids want an ice cream or you want lunch or whatever. And it's great to stop in these small towns, whether it's, just this Ontario trip reminded me of that, but it exists all the way across Canada. We've got these great little rural towns, and RVing gives you that opportunity. Put it in the parking lot, and take the family out through the town as well. So this is a nice
Hmm.
little trip that covers all of that.
So, do you find people using them to visit urban destinations specifically, or is that more incidental? Because I know, here in Vancouver, there's a pretty big RV park just over on the North Shore, just outside of the city,
I've
and you
stayed at
see
that
that
one.
in some
Yeah.
places. I do think of it as a wildhood, rural travel device, but it could be also used to city hop, I suppose, as well, or mix it up.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think it's a good point, but it's maybe less on people's radar. But as we talked about, like hotel costs, you're paying
Hmm.
$400 plus a room, and I'm not trying to pick on the hotel industry here at all because there's
No, no.
something there for everybody. But let's be honest, it's increased so much. So if there's a park close to downtown, I know the one you're talking about there, and I think that it has access on the train there too, right? So if you can get into downtown through public transit and park your vehicle, or even if you tow a lot of these RVs, you actually can tow a car, etc. And then they go into town.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the
Hmm.
best of both. It's the best of all worlds. So for me, if I was out, in your way, I'd be, doing like a winter adventure through powder highway, sort of like British Columbia, and doing all of the Kicking Horse, etc., Purcell Mountains, the backcountry of Revelstoke
Hmm.
Resort, but probably also headed towards, either Calgary or Vancouver to get that sort of final hit of the urban environment.
We can talk about a couple of the other trip guides too, but you just touched on something as well. It's currently December 18th as I record this, and this will go live in a few days. Winter usage.
Yeah, I heard Whistler's getting dumped on right now.
It is, and certainly I think that probably flies under the radar for a lot of people that this isn't actually just a May to October thing you can use. That there's actually a ski vacation potential,
Yeah.
and other winter destinations because
Yeah.
they get the right one, and you can have a 4-season lodge on wheels.
Yeah, and we carefully promote that. We want people to use shoulder season. We see a lot of stuff. I mean, I've got a great fall itinerary I can share with you as well. But I think
Yeah,
the winter one, obviously RVs you need to be a little careful in colder temperatures and
fair.
freezing, etc. But there are units built for that, and we definitely see it on a lot of the ski hills, etc. And you know what? We've seen a lot of it with people searching the Northern Lights. We get a lot of inquiries every
Oh
year
yeah.
for people who want to go up into the Yukon, and that's where there's no light pollution, etc. You're in your unit. You really are out there.
Hmm.
You're really finding your wildhead in that case and capturing that amazing moment. But yeah, definitely 4-season use is something possible. I think fall is one of my favorite times. I don't know about you guys
Hmm.
out there. I mean, you guys have got a stunning landscape, but I mean, in Ontario and specifically Quebec, like Quebec with the
Yeah.
changing of the leaves, I think is just wild. And to have someone doing that kind of trip, I would recommend obviously starting in like using the provincial national parks again potentially, but like doing Quebec City in the Charlevoix region. So basically going from Quebec City, you can go all the way up to the Laurentians and into Saguenay and well Trois-Rivières and Saguenay and just really explore all that those sort of vibrant autumn colors have to offer. And then the Laurentian Mountains are just stunning, especially at that time of year. And there's so much to do along there. There's great fishing. There's whale watching still. There's obviously,
Hmm.
and we talked about this before, David, is like not just the outdoor components, but then the sort of urban components, the fromageries, the wineries, etc. So Quebec City itself just being such a great historical pathway and offering so much through its rich history. I think, that to me is like the perfect component of urban and rural all put in together.
Man, that sounds like an amazing trip. I almost lost myself in daydreaming right there because you're exactly right. Out here, fall on the West Coast, I love fall. It's one of my favorite seasons, but we don't get that color shift like you
Yeah.
do in the Laurentian. I mean, nobody really does it in terms of the Laurentians specifically, but that back Ontario, Eastern Seaboard kind of color shift in fall is just spectacular. So that'd be a trip of a lifetime, really. I mean, that would be amazing. But I suppose if you own an RV, it's not the trip of a lifetime, is it? It's kind of just something you do every fall.
That's it. Yeah, just light the fire up outside, even if it's a chillier night, and off you go. And I think that's what we're talking about here. Is I love the fact that it's each to their own. It's personalized. It's like choose your own adventure, essentially, and that's what it's as far as your imagination will allow you to go.
And I'm sure there's an advancement too as okay, so you buy the RV, say whatever you buy, a tent trailer, you buy a 20-footer, 28-footer, whatever, a motorhome. Maybe your first couple trips are you're driving to a campsite and you're staying there for 3 nights, then you're going home. And then you start getting to the road trips. And then you're getting to longer road trips. And then you're going into the winter side of things. Like, do you see that as people almost get more
Progression.
advanced in their
Oh,
skills?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've nailed it. You just see that progression, and you just get better at it. And not to say that it's that hard, but there are a lot of components to it, and I think that's probably one of the barriers to start. But once you get better and better at it, and you get more accustomed to it, then you're like, well, what can I do? Oh, maybe I can do this, and I can do that, and so on and so forth. We are seeing a change in the style of units as well. So it's like from what you were used to with your family campground, etc. A lot of the units now are getting more and more, how can I say it, mobile in a way. Like they're getting more rugged. So you see like these
Right.
teardrop trailers that are almost have like these off-road tires on them, and people are really
Seen them,
fan
yeah.
just taking them out, right into the wilderness. And obviously, we always encourage everyone to stay in a campground, et cetera, because that's sort of Canadian law with what they call boondocking, et cetera. But in terms of the exploration component, just to go up to a river and start fishing, et cetera, or whatever, and really sort of go backcountry, I think that that's become a big thing, and that's definitely appealing to the younger demographic.
Yeah, I see those units at the trade shows a lot, and they're
Pretty
very
cool.
cool looking.
Yeah,
Yeah, very, very cool. Total off-grid, self-contained, the solar panels and the off-road tires and things. Yeah, really interesting. And certainly you're right about the progression. I mean, my wife and I have been laughing about our usage of the RV this year, is that every trip we learned a little something. You know, we learned a little something. Like the first one was like, when you turn the fridge off, don't close the door. Because you probably know exactly what I'm talking about right there.
Because I've done the same.
And then you're like, okay, I learned something there. I'm not going to get into to our
Yeah.
listeners what happens when you do that, but there's certain things you learn every time. And by the end of the summer, we're pretty much we're good to go, and we're feeling like RV pros. But I'm sure there'll be more lessons learned.
There's so many hacks and there's so many tricks, but I tell you what, at any point in your RV lifestyle or your RV journey, you're always going to have that sort of stamp idiot on your forehead at one stage.
Yeah.
You're going to just make that one move that, whoops. But hey, that's part of it, right? That's part of that great community. So I think, it's all fun.
It's true. The community is great. I mean, I've seen it at campgrounds where someone can't back their RV up, and a complete stranger comes up and takes the wheel of their car, and it's like, no, I'll do this for you, and I'll show you. You're never going to get it in there. You're not doing it even close to right, and they'll just take the car. Someone's a complete stranger taking someone's car and backing their unit in, and it's a rare thing to see. And
I mean, we've all done it. There's nothing more nerve-wracking than pulling into a campground in the evening and thinking, oh man, I got to make this in there. But again, the campgrounds themselves are super helpful with a lot of that. If you need a pull through site, which those RVers out there will know what I'm talking about, but basically one where you don't have to reverse in that, then you can always request that kind of stuff. Those are the kind of hacks that we're talking about.
What are you offering specifically tactically on your website and through your other partner channels that people could find?
It's great timing. I know we're recording this on the 18th, and it's going to come out shortly after. We are launching our new website just next week. So
oh, wow.
Next Monday, so everyone can get a brand new web experience. We've been working on it for over a year. It's our most forward-facing asset. We get around 2 million visits from Canadians per year through GoRving.ca. So amazing. It's a full-on site that really offers you a lot of tools, whether it's a dealer locator, like you mentioned, or a campground locator. There's a trip planner on there with suggested trip guides. We spoke about that. But there's also like things like an RV matchmaker where, if you really just don't know what kind of unit you want, we kind of sort of through a fun way help pair a unit to you so you can start your journey of sort of, I guess, understanding and exploring. So, I mean, this is a big decision for a lot of people. So we urge people to take their time. We are here to help. We've got a lot of blogs. We have affordability guides as well. We've got an affordability calculator so you can kind of figure out what it is you can afford at what percentage.
So great.
So on and so forth. That's why we're set up, David. We're here to just really help guide people. We want to inspire everybody, as I keep saying, but we really want to help guide people carefully into the lifestyle, because once you're in, hopefully it's for life, and you do it right. And that's what we're here to provide those tools for.
GoRving.ca.
Yes,
that's
sir.
the portal to start your journey if you're not already starting your journey, or maybe you have and you want to take the next step or see where it can take you. GoRving.ca. That's amazing. So much great information. I'm feeling so inspired again. I want to go back to my RV. I winterized it. Are you
ready for spring or what?
I need to be. There's things I'm already thinking of. And certainly my kids they keep asking to go back, and I was like, oh, we kind of winterized it, but certainly by Marchish, I think we'll be opening the doors and getting back into it. So I'm already feeling antsy to go do that. Anything we missed? Anything you want to say to our listeners about GoRving.ca, GoRving Canada, or just the RV lifestyle at all?
I'm hoping that people are kind of understanding what we're talking about today in terms of that freedom to discover and explore. I think that's the key message here is you don't have to look too far for a good time to be able to connect with family and friends. It's literally just around the corner, and use us to help guide you along that route.
That's so true. And that's actually something that having kids has taught me too, that sometimes you might think, okay, I got to take them on the vacation of a lifetime. I got to fly them down to Costa Rica or something like that. And you find that that's actually not what they care about. They actually just want to kind of be with you in a fun environment. And that could literally be 2 hours from your home. I am an RV'er, you're an RV'er, and I think everyone should give it a try.
It's a great for also the final thing I would mention is it's great for a digital detox too. We're all stuck in those phones so often, and I think
So
especially
true.
with the kids with the iPads, and I was just picturing it as you were talking about your kids there, and I know they're a bit younger, but I was thinking about them looking up at the stars, and that as cheesy as it is, that always works. So it's a tried and true thing through the decades, and I think it still remains so.
The night sky outside of the city is probably my favorite thing about doing it, actually. So yeah,
There you go.
it still resonates with me after these years. Thank you so much, Chris, for your time today. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
I had a great time.
Yeah, I'm already eager to get back into my RV. It's been an incredible vehicle to elevate our outdoor lifestyle by removing barriers like the logistics of handling young kids, cleanups, meals, etc., to a somewhat reluctant partner who may not love tents, to weather woes and more. We're now a part of a like-minded community of folks who appreciate and love the outdoors and spend a ton of time expressing that love and appreciation. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks camping in a season, we've topped a month plus this summer with more to come in 2025. And it's all thanks to the RV. So I encourage you to check out GoRving.ca and poke around their all-new website. Then stop by a trade show this spring. Maybe rent one this summer? I bet you'll be hooked. And I hope I can see you out there. Maybe lend a hand if I can. I'm David Webb. Thanks for tuning in today, and hey, live the adventure.